Welcome to this Read Naturally Live webinar, How to Use Data to Keep Students Challenged. I'm Karen Hunter, a Read Naturally educational consultant. When students are first placed in Read Naturally Live, we are careful to make sure that they are at a level and a goal that will be challenging, so they'll work hard and make progress. And as their reading skills improve, we want to increase the challenge so they will continue to improve. So we need to understand how to analyze student data and how to determine when and how to increase the challenge. In this webinar, you'll learn why it's critical to keep students challenged and how to monitor a student's performance, how to quickly interpret the data on a students at a glance report, how to determine when a student is ready for more challenge, and what change to make. We'll also share some additional resources on the Read Naturally website. Let's start by talking about when we should monitor student performance. There are two phases. The first phase is checking initial placement after the first 3 to 6 stories to determine whether or not a student's initial placement is appropriate so we can make any necessary changes in a timely way. This webinar will focus on the second phase, learning how to periodically monitor performance throughout the year to keep each student challenged. By creating ongoing challenge, we can maximize each student's achievement. We know that students learn best when they are challenged but not frustrated. In Read Naturally, each student is placed with a reading level and a goal that are just beyond the student's comfort level. The difficulty of the level and the goal requires the student to work hard, but not so hard that the student loses interest and motivation before experiencing success. So, as a student improves, we want to incrementally stretch the student towards higher achievement by adjusting either the level or goal. We can monitor a student's progress by reviewing the story details and graphs during the pass step, and we can analyze a student's data in Read Naturally Live reports. Each time you meet with a student to do the pass step timing, you have an opportunity to review the student's work on that story together. The Story Details tab gives the complete results for the current story. The student receives a gold star next to each requirement that is met. You can also monitor the student's progress by reviewing several graphs. By clicking on the Fluency, Comprehension, or Retail graph, you and your student can see the results for all of the stories passed so far in the current level. On the Reports tab, you can generate reports for groups of students or for an individual student with a specific report. The Students at a Glance report is a very useful group report. It provides data that allows you to quickly identify students who may need more challenge or screen for students who are struggling and may need some adjustments. To learn how to generate reports, you can follow directions provided in the Read Live Smart Start Guide or the Read Live User Guide. Both are available on the Read Naturally website. Next, let's look at how to interpret data on a Students at a Glance report, which gives you a quick look at the data for a group of students. This report is used to check initial placement after students complete the first 3 to 6 stories. We also use this report to review data after students complete the first 12 stories in a level to determine if a change in level or goal is needed, after students complete all 24 stories in a level to determine if a student should advance to the next level. And you can generate this report throughout the year, monthly, bi-weekly, or even weekly, to monitor student progress more frequently. You'll find a full-size copy of this sample Students at a Glance report on page 5 in your handout. It includes a student-by-student summary of results for the stories passed so far for a selected set of students in a selected time frame. The report includes scores for fluency, comprehension, and phonics word lists. The columns provide average scores for the first 3 stories and for the most recent 3 stories the student has completed in the level. For example, Lee's average cold timing score on the first 3 stories is 41 words correct per minute, and his average cold timing score for the most recent 3 stories is 48 words correct per minute. Averaging 3 stories provides trend data that makes it easy to see a student's performance over time. The cold timing offers a baseline score of how well a student can read an unpracticed story. This score can be used to confirm the goal or to indicate that the goal should be changed. The teacher was present for the cold timings for all of these students, so these are reliable scores. If a student is self-timing, the cold timing score may be less reliable. The student's goal should exceed the cold timing by approximately 30 in grades 4 and below and 40 in grades 5 and above. The goal should be challenging so that the student needs to read the passage multiple times. The hot timing indicates whether or not a student has been able to complete the steps successfully and meets the goal. The student's goal should be equal to or slightly less than the hot timing score. It's helpful to visualize how the goal should relate to the cold timing and hot timing. Here, the goal is 120 words correct per minute. And the cold timing score is 91, which is approximately 30 less than the goal, just right for a student in 4th grade and below. The hot timing score should be equal to or slightly greater than the goal, 120. Here, the hot timing is 123. A hot timing score 10 or more words higher than the goal may indicate the level or goal needs to be raised. The expression score evaluates whether the student can read like he or she speaks. To meet the pass criteria, a student must achieve an expression score of 2 or higher based on the expression rubric. The practice score should be 3 to 10. If the student can meet the pass requirements in less than 3 practices, the level or goal may be too easy. If the student needs more than 10 practices, the level or goal may be too difficult. The quiz score reflects the student's first attempt to answer each question. Once a student has worked through the first few stories, an average quiz score of 80% or higher is an acceptable average. When reviewing the data, we use several indicators to help us determine if a student needs more challenge. If the student meets 2 or more of the indicators, it may be time to increase the challenge. We start by checking a student's average cold timing score, hot timing score, and quiz score to see if 1 or more of these scores shows improvement. If the student's average hot timing score is at least 10 greater than the goal, if the student's average number of practices has decreased or remains at 3 or less, and if the student's behavior has changed, which might indicate the student is no longer challenged. For example, the student may appear bored, restless, or distracted. This is Lee, a 3rd grade student. His data is on the top row of the Students at a Glance report in your handout. Let's find out if Lee needs more challenge by looking at each part of his data to answer these questions, to see if he meets the indicators for increasing challenge from the last slide. Lee has completed the first 12 stories in level 2.5. Has Lee's average cold timing score improved? Yes, his average cold timing score increased from 41 to 48. Has Lee's average hot timing score improved? Yes, his average hot timing score has improved from 74 to 80 words correct per minute. Has Lee's average hot timing score exceeded his goal by 10 or more? Yes, his average hot timing score 80 now exceeds his goal of 70 by 10. Has Lee's average quiz score improved? Yes, his average quiz score has improved from 87 to 93%. Has Lee's average number of practices decreased? The average number of practices has decreased from 6 to 5. So what do you think? Does Lee need more challenge? Lee's improvement is evident on all of these indicators. So yes, Lee does need more challenge. We just checked Lee's data. Now let's check Jeff, Janelle, and John to see if they meet the indicators for increasing challenge. This time we'll go a little faster. I'll show you how to quickly look at a Students at a Glance report for the indicators for increasing the challenge. First, I look down the column of practices and highlight any scores lower than 3 or higher than 10. These students all have scores from 3 to 10. Next, I look down the column of quiz scores and highlight any scores lower than 80% accuracy. These students all have scores 80% or higher. Then I look down the column of expression scores and watch for any scores lower than 2. All of these students have satisfactory expression scores. The next step is to examine the relationship between each student's cold timing score, goal, and hot timing score. Jeff is a third grade student. He has completed 12 stories in sequence level 3.0. His average cold timing score, 61 words correct per minute, is unchanged. His goal should be about 30 above his cold timing. His current goal is 90, which is approximately 30 words above his average cold timing score. Jeff's hot timing score has improved from 93 to 97, and it's now 7 words above his goal of 90. Jeff has good expression, averages 3 practices, and his average quiz score has improved from 67 to 83%. So Jeff meets most of the indicators, and he may be ready for more challenge. Janelle is a 4th grade student. She has completed 12 stories in sequence level 2.5. Her average cold timing score has improved from 46 to 67 words correct per minute. Her goal should be about 30 above her cold timing, which would be 97. But her current goal is 85, and we can see that her goal was already raised from 75 to 85 while working in this level. Her current goal is only 18 words above her average cold timing score. Janelle's hot timing score has improved from 78 to 95, and it's now 10 words above her goal of 85. Janelle has good expression, averages 3 practices, and her average quiz score has improved from 80 to 100%. So Janelle is clearly ready for more challenge. John is a 6th grade student. He has completed 12 stories in sequence level 5.0. John's average cold timing score has only improved by 1 word, from 103 to 104 words correct per minute. Because John is in 6th grade, his goal should be about 40 above his cold timing. His current goal is 140, which is approximately 40 words above his average cold timing score. John's hot timing score has improved from 141 to 144, and it's now only 4 words above his goal of 140. John has good expression, averages 6 practices, and his average quiz score has improved from 76 to 81%. John's scores do not indicate that he is ready for more challenge. But according to the data, Lee, Jeff, and Janelle are ready for more challenge. Let's look at some of the guidelines for increasing the challenge, and then we'll make instructional decisions for each of these students. When a student needs an increased challenge, you can raise the level or the goal, but you should not increase the difficulty of both the level and the goal at the same time. Raising both at the same time might make passing the story too difficult and frustrate the student. You should change one element, assess the impact, and then change the other element later. If you decide to raise the level, typically raise it by half a year. If you decide to raise the goal, typically raise it by 10 words at a time. If a student needs more challenge after the first 12 stories in a level, you'll typically raise the goal because most students need to complete all 24 stories in a level before tackling more difficult material. In most cases, after a student completes all 24 stories in a level, you'll assign the next level and keep the same goal because you should not change more than one element at a time. However, sometimes a student would benefit from staying at the current level. If a series is available that would be appropriate, the student can be placed in another series at the same level. For example, if a student completed sequence level 3.0, you might decide to assign the idioms level 3.0 next, rather than moving on to sequence level 3.5. The only time you'll raise the level after the first 12 stories is if the student is working in a Read Naturally level that is significantly below his or her long-term fluency benchmark goal, and if the student has good comprehension, with an average quiz score greater than 80% on the last 3 stories. A student has met his long-term fluency benchmark goal if he is able to read unpracticed, grade-level passages at, near, or above the 50th percentile on national norms. This table shows the oral reading fluency norms for students in grades 1 through 8. It's based on the work of Jan Hasbrook and Gerald Tyndall, who combined data on hundreds of thousands of students from across the country. The spring score at the 50th percentile for each grade is circled in red. We can use this table to get some indication of a student's progress toward his or her long-term fluency goal by comparing the student's average cold timing score to the long-term fluency goal for the student's grade level. We compare the cold timing score because the student has not practiced the story before doing the cold timing. For example, the long-term fluency goal for a 3rd grade student is to read grade level text at 107 words correct per minute by the end of the year. We need to keep a student's long-term fluency goal in mind as we consider increasing the challenge. Here are 2 more things to consider when increasing the challenge. First, the data helps determine whether or not a student is ready for more challenge. But we should keep in mind what we know about a student before making a decision about raising the level or goal. Teacher judgment is very important. It's also important to discuss the change with the student, asking for his or her input. Students know how hard they're working, and they have a good idea of how much harder they can work. We determined that Lee is ready for more challenge. Now we must decide if we should raise his level or his goal. So let's look at his data again and answer these questions. Has Lee completed 12 or 24 stories? Lee has completed only 12 stories. What is Lee's long-term benchmark fluency goal? His long-term goal is 107 words correct per minute. Is Lee closer to meeting his long-term benchmark level or rate? Lee is in 3rd grade, but he's working in level 2.5, so he is working a year below grade level. Look at Lee's average cold timing score. When he reads his story for 1 minute without practicing first, his average score is 48 words correct per minute. But his long-term fluency goal is at the 50th percentile for the spring of 3rd grade is 107 words correct per minute. So Lee is almost 60 words below his long-term fluency benchmark goal. Lee is closer to meeting his long-term benchmark level, but he has a long way to go to reach his long-term benchmark rate. So, should we raise Lee's level or goal? it would be best to raise his goal. So we've decided to make a change. We've selected Lee's goal as the element to change. His current goal is 70. Now we need to decide what his new goal should be. Following the guidelines, we'd raise his goal by 10, which would make his new goal 80. And of course, we'd discuss this change with Lee. Let's make a decision for each of these students. We've already made a decision for Lee. We're raising his goal by 10 to 80. Earlier, we determined that Jeff meets most of the criteria. His goal 90 is approximately 30 above his average cold timing score 61. But his average hot timing score 97 is only 7 words above his goal, rather than 10 words above suggested by the indicators for increasing challenge. His average number of practices is only 3, so he is passing fairly easily, and his average quiz score is 83%. Jeff is working in grade level material, but his unpracticed cold timing score 61 is still a long way from his long-term fluency benchmark rate 107. He has only completed 12 stories so far. We do know that Jeff is a hard worker, and we know he will rise to more challenge. So Jeff will continue working through level 3.0, and we'll go ahead and raise his goal by 10 words to 100, which is close to his average hot timing score 97. Janelle meets all of the criteria for a change. Her goal, 85, is only 18 words above her average cold timing score, rather than 30 words for a 4th grader. Her average hot timing score is 95. It's 10 words above her goal, 85. And remember, her goal was already raised by 10 words from 75 to 85 while working in this level. Her average number of practices is only 3, and her average quiz score is 100% on the last 3 stories. Janelle's unpracticed cold timing score 67 is still a long way from her long-term fluency benchmark rate 123. She's in 4th grade, but she's working in level 2.5. She has only finished the first 12 stories so far. So, since Janelle's goal was recently raised, since she's working in material 2 years below grade level, and her average score for the quiz is 100%, we'll go ahead and raise her level by half a year to level 3.0. She'll continue with her goal of 85 because we only want to raise one element at a time. Earlier, we determined that John's scores did not indicate the need for more challenge. His goal, 140, is approximately 40 above his average cold timing score, which is right where it should be for a student in grades 5 and above. And his average hot timing score, 144, is only 4 words above his goal of 140. His average number of practices is 6, so he is still having to work hard to pass a story. And his average quiz score is 81%. John's unpracticed cold timing score, 104, is still a long way to his long-term fluency benchmark rate, 150 words correct per minute. He's in 6th grade, but he's working in level 5.0, and he's finished 12 stories. John's level and goal seem to be appropriate for him right now, so we won't make any changes yet. As you can see, by learning how to quickly interpret the data on a students at a glance report, we can make good instructional decisions to keep these students challenged. There are lots of additional resources available on the Read Naturally website. You can check out these resources to learn more about generating reports and monitoring student performance. You'll find this document especially helpful, Interpreting Actionable Data on Students at a Glance Report. You can refer to it to review much of the key content in this webinar. Here's Read Naturally's contact information. And now we'll answer some questions. We've gathered the questions that many of you asked on the registration forms for this webinar. Many of those questions have already been answered in the presentation, but we picked out several to answer now. First question, what is better information, the cold timing words per minute or the hot timing words per minute? Well, think of it this way. The hot timing score tells you the student was able to meet his or her goal after completing all of the steps in a Read Naturally story. The cold timing score helps you see how the student is progressing toward reaching the long-term goal of reading unpracticed grade level passages at, near, or above the 50th percentile. So they're both important, but they tell you different things. Here's another question. What do you say when a sixth grader asks, when is the program done? Like, does it have an endpoint to exit a student out? That is such a great question. I can just picture a sixth grader saying that. With older students, I think it's helpful to have a reality check. Sit down with the student and point out the end of the year spring goal for sixth grade on the Hasbrook and Tyndall oral reading fluency table, which is 150 words correct per minute, or show the student your district expectations for grade level fluency. I would explain that the unpracticed cold timing score needs to be 150 words correct per minute on grade level passages. So the student may need to work through a couple of Read Naturally levels to get up to grade level passages while working toward the rate of 150 words correct per minute. The day-to-day work through the program makes more sense when a student thinks in terms of the long-term fluency benchmark goal that he or she's working towards. Here's another question. How do you project goals for special education students based on their performance on Read Live? Well, for special education, you typically need to write long and short-term goals. For special education students working in Read Live, you might write a long-term goal like this. The student will read unpracticed grade level passages at the 50th percentile rate for the student's grade level based on the Hasbrook and Tyndall oral reading fluency data, or based on your district grade level expectations. And a short-term goal might state this. The student will meet all requirements to pass each story at his or her Read Naturally Live placement level and gain 20 words correct per minute by the end of the quarter or by the end of the trimester. Here's another question. How do I break down results by the quarter? For example, how many stories has a student read during the quarter? Well, on the Students at a Glance report, you can indicate the window of time you want the report to include. You can put in the beginning and ending dates for your quarter, and then indicate that you want to include more than one level. So for any students who may have advanced to the next level during that time period, the report displays results for each level worked on during those selected dates. And one final question. Is there a report that shows all levels a student has been placed at and the dates they advanced? Yes, the student level summary report, which is an individual report, lists all of the dates for each story and the date that each story was passed. So you can select 1, 2, or 3 levels to be included in the report. We want to thank you for joining this webinar, and we hope this information will be helpful as you analyze data and make instructional decisions to keep your students challenged.